So our lesson will be next. So Chad, if you want to just make your way up here, and I'm going to let this young man introduce himself. Many of you have already met him, and I look forward, and I'm sure you look forward to hearing what he's got to say out of the Word of God. And Chad will be presenting a lesson to us this morning, and also will be presenting a lesson to us for evening worship. So without any further ado, I'll turn it over to Chad.
I've not met or have not spoken to. My name is Chad Bland. I was born in Mississippi, but spent a good bit of my time living in Piedmont, Alabama. When I was about 12 or 13 years old, we were attending Oxford at the time, me and my family, and we hired a guy named Brad McNutt, who spent a couple of years there and then decided to move off back to Kentucky. But at least while he was there, I thought a lot of Brad, and so he was partially an influence of why I later went to Faulkner University to pursue a degree in biblical text, and later changed to biblical studies. But nonetheless, there's a friend of mine who told me about some work here. I work over at Polaris, and I moved up to the area. Found out by accident, really, that, what do you know, Brad McNutt's preaching 30 minutes from where I live. And so here I am. He's given me the opportunity this morning to fill in for him as he's gone to the beach. And so you'll have me for this morning and this evening. I will start off by saying sometimes I go over, most of the time I don't. It's not something that I've picked up from Brad, but nonetheless, you get out of here when you get out of here. All right? Fair enough. I want to start off this morning with a bit of a confession, a couple really. Number one, sometimes I have this problem of watching YouTube shorts. It's just, I don't know what it is. Sometimes they get really addicting. Sometimes I spend too much time on there. It just happens. And so a while back, there was this ad that showed up for Taylor Swift's song Anti-Hero, okay? And part of it it felt like a really catchy song, and so eventually I just started listening to the song over and over again for a period of time. And those ads have since gone away, and now I don't listen to the song anymore, save when it shows up at work. But I was listening to the song, and despite its catchiness, I started to actually listen to some of the lyrics, and then I became puzzled. Because the first thing that she says in the song is, "I grow older, but never wiser." And that puzzled me. Isn't it supposed to be that as I grow older and mature, that I gain more understanding about life in general? Don't I learn things as I grow older? Shouldn't she as well? Why doesn't she learn? It puzzled me. And so she gets to the chorus where she says, "I'm the problem, it's me. At tea time, everybody agrees." Whatever this thing is that she has going on, not only does she seem to understand that she has this going on, but everyone in her life seems to understand this as well. And then she says, "I'd rather stare into the sun than look in the mirror." I don't know about yourself. I have tried staring into the sun a couple of times. One, just to see why not. The other time was actually, I think it was a solar eclipse, and that was actually pretty cool. But I had sunglasses for that. But it hurts looking at the sun. I don't like looking at the sun. I haven't done it since. At least I learned my lesson there, I suppose. I'd rather stare into the sun than look into the mirror. What a bizarre statement. And so, reflecting about this, I then thought of James chapter 1. If you want to turn there, we'll spend a good bit of our time this morning. James chapter 1 and verse 19, starting out. James says, "Understand this, my dear brothers and sisters. Let every person be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger. For human anger does not accomplish God's righteousness. So put away all filth and evil excess, and humbly welcome the message implanted within you, which is able to save your souls. But be sure you live out the message and save your souls. Or do not merely listen to it and so deceive yourselves. For if someone merely listens to the message and does not live it out, he is like someone who gazes at his own face in the mirror. And for he gazes at himself and then goes out immediately, forgets what sort of person he was. But the one who peers into the perfect law of liberty and fixes his attention there and does not become a forgetful listener, but one who lives it out, he will be blessed in what he does. If someone thinks he is religious, yet does not bridle his tongue, and so deceives his heart, his religion is futile. Pure and undefiled religion before God the Father is this: to care for orphans and widows in their adversity, and to keep oneself unstained from the world. When you go to the bathroom in the morning, what's one of the first things that we do? We look in the mirror, right? We use it to judge ourselves. Maybe I don't like the haircut I have. Maybe I think I should go get a haircut soon. I've gotten a little stubbly, so I need to shave my face. I have that pimple in that one spot that's really driving me insane. That needs to go. Maybe I don't like something about myself. That's something that I need to change. But we use the mirror to evaluate ourselves. So, number one for us this morning, we must look at ourselves. When dealing with other people in general, whatever that might be, especially if someone's angry with us, listening to them before talking. He says, verse 18, or 19 rather, let every person be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to anger, for human anger does not accomplish God's righteousness. Anger does not accomplish anything. If the world looks at someone who claims to be a Christian on Sunday mornings, Sunday nights, Wednesday nights, but whenever they try to talk to these individuals, they don't listen, but instead they react and they're hot-headed. No one's going to listen to that kind of person, especially when we ever try to talk about Jesus to them. The world's not going to see Christ in someone who's hot-headed and angry. They're not going to see Christ in someone who is arrogant, who won't listen to others. What do you see in the mirror? We use mirrors to clean ourselves up. inspect ourselves. Christians, we look in the Word of God to clean ourselves up. When I look into the Word, especially something like the Sermon on the Mount, right? I hate reading that sometimes. So I realize I'm not always what this tells me that I should be. Number 2, faith is something that is active. Watch the wording that James uses in this section here. He says to put away filth and evil. He tells them to live out the message, verse 22. He tells them to gaze into the perfect law of liberty, verse 25. He tells them not to be a forgetful hearer, verse 25 as well. Verse 26, he tells them to bridle the tongue. And in verse 27, he says to care for the orphans and widows. Faith isn't something that is going to be come to church on Sunday morning, Sunday night, and then I'm good to go. It's going to be something that takes effort and something that we actively do, as James points out here. Number 3, we strive for being in the image of God. Turn over with me, if you will, to the book of Romans. Romans chapter 8. Hold your place there in James and we'll come back to it. Romans chapter 8, verse 29. Because those whom he foreknew, he also predestined to be conformed to the image of his Son, that his Son would be the firstborn among many brothers and sisters. And those he predestined, he also called, and those he called, he also justified, and those he justified, he also glorified. To be conformed to the image of God, we must look into the perfect law of liberty, as James puts it. Investigating ourselves, examining ourselves, judging ourselves. Do we live up to the standard? What do we need to change? Live out that message that he's given to us. Growing up, my parents didn't like me watching the show very much. They thought it was stupid. They didn't understand it. But I loved watching SpongeBob SquarePants. I still watch it to this day. I think it's hysterical. There's an episode where SpongeBob he's out of ice cream, and he wants an ice cream sundae. And so instead of getting some ice cream like a normal person, he scrounges around the house trying to find some ingredients to make the sundae. So he takes like some ketchup, I don't remember if he puts bananas in it or not, just a bunch of disgusting things. But the nail in the coffin was this peanut plant that he had in the window. And he puts it in the ice cream sundae. And you can see this green vapor coming from his mouth. He has bad breath. And so he goes out into the town, he starts greeting people, and everyone runs away from him. And his best friend, who does not have a nose, isn't able to smell his bad breath. And so he tells him, "You must be ugly." And he believes this. And he's crushed. He's sad that people think he's ugly. And so he becomes depressed and he locks himself in his house. And eventually, he has his friend eat this sundae of his, and they realize they have bad breath, and they run off into the sunset, destroying the whole town because their breath smells terrible. But there's a point in the episode where his best friend comes to SpongeBob and tells him, that he's ugly. And he gets him to stand on the roof of his house, and he starts shouting out, "I'm ugly and I'm proud." He starts off really tiny, but eventually he's screaming at the top of his lungs, "I'm ugly and I'm proud." And that phrase sticks out with me. I'm ugly and I'm proud. The intention was for him to have some self-confidence, right? But when I think about looking into the mirror, do we see ourselves sometimes as ugly? And I don't mean physically ugly, I mean spiritually ugly. There are some, like you and me maybe, that come into to churches, this one down the street, other places here, that come sit in these same pews, listen to someone else speak, and they get out afterward, and perhaps they go out to eat. And I've had friends of various kinds who work in restaurants communicate that the people that come in on Sunday mornings are the absolute worst. They treat the waiters terribly. They're just the most rude people I've ever met. Don't like dealing with them. Hate working on Sundays. And there are some people who are even proud of this, the way that they treat other people, that they don't think anything of their behavior. Maybe you've seen videos like it of this woman chewing out the people at Burger King because they did something wrong. Their ice cream machine was down, what have you. But they just flip out, and they have no regard for their behavior whatsoever. When we look in the mirror, do we see Christ? Are we willing to ask the question, am I spiritually ugly? Or do I have things that I need to improve? When we read the Old Testament, when we read about these individuals who mess up, do we read about them? We're supposed to read about them for our learning. We have these stories to teach us, to learn. But also, we have to be willing to tell someone else that they're ugly. I say it very carefully, right? Because we should be able to go up to our brothers and sisters who aren't living life like Christ and be able to tell them that they need to change. In Matthew chapter 7, Jesus says, "Do not judge, so that you will not be judged. For by the standard you judge, you will be judged, and the measure you use will be the measure you receive. Why do you see the speck in your brother's eye, but fail to see the beam of wood in your own eye? Or how can you say to your brother, let me remove the speck from your eye, while there is a beam in your own? You hypocrite, first remove the beam from your own eye, then you can clearly see to remove the speck from your brother's eye. Do not give what is holy to dogs, or throw your pearls before pigs. Otherwise, they will trample them under their feet, and turn around and tear you to pieces. When Jesus tells people on the Sermon on the Mount, don't judge, he's telling them, you be sure you're right yourself. You look in the mirror, and if there's a plank in your eye, you better take that out before you go to your brother. But he's still saying, if there's a speck in your brother's eye, you need to let them know. You need to remove that. Do it lovingly. Do it tenderly. Help those who are struggling. Pure religion before God the Father. Look in the mirror. Look into the law. Don't look into it and then turn around the next and forget the kind of person that you saw in there. Live it out. Are you a Christian? Have you not lived up to the standard? Are you struggling to live up to that standard that God set before you? If you have any need, whatever that might be, we love you. We're here for you. We'll pray for you. Won't you come while we stand and sing a song of invitation?